The Elder Fire is the original luminous principle envisioned as a generational lineage of vibrant ancestors burning bright in the distant past, as the radiating sun and the pulsating glow of the oldest stars, as the flame found in the sacred heart, the eldest emanation of the light itself. Welcome to the Elder Fire Podcast. Hello, everybody. I wanted to first off thank you for tuning in to this podcast. It's definitely a labor of love. And I know that listening to an hour-long podcast is not something that everyone can easily make time for. So if you are, then I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for supporting this work with your attention. And I know that attention is something that many people are trying to grab these days. So I thank you for sharing yours with me. With that said, it's pretty cool. This podcast is getting more traction and more downloads than I thought was going to be possible at this stage in its life. And this is currently only the 6th episode. So the fact that it's getting more downloads than I thought possible, I think is a great sign that people want something that's artful and that is thought out and not just a quick gimmick like a lot of what's out there these days. With that said, I wanted to give a little bit of context for this particular podcast. It's one that merged a couple of essays that I wrote a few years ago on my Substack. The first one called We Are Not Computers, an invitation to stop using machine metaphors. And the other was called Remembering the Secret Whispers of the World. Now, this particular podcast has taken those two essays and remixed them, repurposed them, and added easily 60% new original material that was not in those essays. But some of you who possibly read those essays might find some pieces of it slightly familiar. Although, honestly, it has gone in a totally different direction at this point and turned out to be a lot more epic than I thought it was going to be. But I guess I'll let you be the judge of how you feel about it. With that said, I also wanted to encourage you to come join my Substack. And it's a great way to support the podcast and to stay connected to my work and to get access to things that are only released through Substack. And for those of you who don't know, Substack is an email-based platform, meaning that all you need to do is enter your email and that gives you access because it's pretty much just like joining an email newsletter. But there are some cool features with Substack that allows you to do a lot more, like send out videos and podcasts and things of that nature. And my Substack is eatingancientvirtue.substack.com, but the link to it will be in the description of wherever you can find this podcast, so Spotify, Apple, YouTube, whatever the case may be. If you're listening to this because someone shared it with you, just go to one of those platforms, type in the Elder Fire Podcast, and you can find the Substack in the description. Or, like I said, just type in eatingancientvirtue.substack.com, and you'll find it. And there is a free version and a paid version, so if spending money at the moment is not something you want to do, you don't have to in order to stay connected and support this podcast. Just signing up goes a long way. And for those of you who do feel called to potentially going a little bit deeper and getting some money involved, then you can join the Substack for as little as $5.72 a month if you join for the yearly version at the time of the creating of this podcast, and or $7 a month if you want to go on a monthly basis with it. Every month, I'm releasing a deep dive course into some aspect of eating ancient virtue, things that involve ancestry, wildness, embodiment work, alchemy, healthcraft, fate and destiny weaving, and all of that good stuff that I talk about here and have in my Substack. So if those things are of interest to you, then please come and join and check out what's available. Also, my book that has been cooking for the last few years called In Praise of the Wild Spirit, How to Rewild 21st Century Humans, is finally done being edited by my wife. And that'll be out very, very, very soon. So if you're interested in getting my perspective on rewilding, then that'll be something to check out soon. Subscribe to the Substack in order to know when it's released. With that said, thank you all for being here, and let's get into it. Speak to me of weaving, from human hands to mechanical engines. Ancient Greece possessed a potent myth which told of three goddesses, known as the Fates. These beings were sometimes referred to as the Three Sisters. Their names are Clotho, the spinner, who spun the thread of life, Lachesis, the allotter, who measured its length, and Atropos, the inflexible, who cut the thread, thereby ending a life. From their roles, I am sure you can extrapolate that they were weavers, threadbearers, who played a central role in spinning the great tapestry of life and death into being. This myth holds key importance in our story for a variety of reasons. The first of which is to remind us of how we once understood and mapped the working of the world. That every life born, whether mortal or immortal alike, was being woven into reality by hands. The grand unfolding of fate itself was a living process, thread purposefully spun, length carefully measured, and finally exactingly cut by hands. At its core, the mechanics of reality were not considered mechanics so much as the actions of beings working with hands. The second reason this myth is important to our story is because it gives us a backdrop for the timeless saying, a twist of fate, which refers to a thread of the unfolding reality that is twisted, knotted, or redirected in some unexpected way, giving us a turning point in time that leads down a different path than the one we thought we saw ahead of us. Time flows on with unrelenting power, and its primary currency is not seconds, minutes, or hours, but change. The Fates have woven and continue to weave a complex tale on Earth, of which human life is but one thread, and in 1760, life on this planet took a serious turn, a collective twist of fate, as the Industrial Revolution was born. The tool most often attributed to the three sisters who are the weavers of fate is a loom. And ironically enough, the Industrial Revolution began in Great Britain in 1764 as James Hargreaves conceived the idea for a yarn spinning machine called the spinning jenny. This was a machine meant to weave yarn at a faster rate than the human hand. From a commercial standpoint, it was brilliant. However, it shone so bright that this one move dramatically shifted our orientation as a species. Gone was the dependence on the human hand and its limitations to create. The focus shifted in that moment to mechanics, maxed out quotas, and unrelenting productivity. To offer perspective, it allowed one human to work on 8 to 10 spools of yarn where once there had been only one. Production was dismembered from a humane rhythm. Shortly after, the steam engine was born, and off to the races we were. Soon, steam engines were adapted to factories, mills, locomotives, and ships. The machine revolution had begun, and with it came the need for people willing to adapt, to become skilled in the use of these new machines. This seems like an expansion, but as Newtonian physics and Taoists alike contend, there is an equal and opposite reaction to every action. Thus, as our capacity to produce with the aid of our mechanical allies grew, our perceptual focus shrank. Slowly but surely, many of the skills that once reigned supreme and the abilities once critical to the survival of our ancestors were replaced with these new mechanical orientations. This shift goes much deeper than our external capabilities, like the act of weaving or making fires by hand, because it goes to the heart of focus and perception itself, a law which states that what we focus our attention upon determines what we perceive. The Industrial Revolution did not just throw open the doors of perpetual motion and unending productivity, it solidified the demand for humans to begin selecting for a new kind of information flow, the language of the machine people. Speaking the language of the machine people. What defines communication? I suppose it depends on who you ask. Does the honeybee communicate? Does the mycelia beneath the soil speak? Does the horseshoe crab convey? The clear answer to all these questions is, of course, a resounding yes. These kinds of questions point to a truth that was once widely known by virtually all humans who walked upon the earth. The whole world is speaking. All of nature is in dialogue. From large expansive rotations of a galaxial arm to the chemical burst passing between butterflies. And obviously, if they can communicate, then they are receiving and transmitting information. Honeybees, fungal mycelia, and horseshoe crabs are all ancient and have existed long before humans. Clearly, the information they possess is quite effective. The Roman deity Mercury has become popularized in modern times as the god of communication, the divine messenger between humans and the gods. And yes, they, for Mercury is a hermaphroditic figure, does hold the mysteries of communication. But Mercury was also the god of thresholds, crossroads, and intersections. When two forces or beings touch one another, with words or otherwise, there Mercury can be found. They do not just represent communication in the way of human language, but wherever it occurs at any scale. The cellular information highways in the body, the flock of finches sitting in a tree at night chirping back and forth, or the pheromone signaling of army ants on the march is all mercurial. Mercury was once more present in the human relationship to the forces of nature. Once, we could literally speak to the birds, a skill still maintained by a variety of hunter-gatherers. And we could also dialogue with the primal energies moving all around us. The overwhelming majority of ancient deities were not just archetypal, which is a facet of many of them to be sure, but at another level, they were a personification of primeval energies that we were in direct communication with. The loss of a connection to the gods is also in many ways a loss of a connection to nature. We have become less environmental as we have shut down ecological information flow. Like Mercury, who lives at the places where two coyote trails meet, or the place where two radio waves pass through one another. Many of the old gods are a phenomenon in the universe understood through human perception. Indigenous and tribal cultures connected to polytheistic mythic traditions, steeped in nature, and engaged in ongoing practices meant to widen, deepen, and refine perception, represent what was once the norm for humanity. Baseline. This baseline has been interrupted with a different rhythm that sounds more like the turning of gears. A popular opinion that has grown into prominence over the recent years is that we live in an age of access to more information than we have ever had before. In fact, many call this epoch the information age. These days, we think that all information looks a particular way, like the kind of data you might find in a ledger. It's not necessarily that we have access to a generalized more, as I would say it's more of a different kind these days. Although it has grown tremendously in strength, we had already begun to collectively select for what we might call the accounting aspects of information since the early rise of high civilization thousands of years ago. In fact, some of the earliest, if not the earliest forms of writing come from government accountants keeping books on the numbers, not poets serenading their lovers. Not only this, but the act of placing symbolic letters on stone tablets or parchment paper is an extension of this form of information. It keeps an unbroken, incorruptible record of something, and thus is meant to represent the unequivocal hard truth, like ones and zeros that require exact precision to function. This is how machines keep track of data. It was also critical when early forms of government were counting their money. Conversely, cultures which transmit knowledge orally often perceive truth to be more contextual because the information is held within a living being and transmitted through their own words in that moment. Truth, then, in this context, is subject to the act of remembering, the moods, the tones, the attitudes, and the morphing words go through as they move from person to person over generations. The Industrial Revolution has not only altered the face of the planet itself by xenoforming it for a species of machines, but it has also shifted the very sense of a human being's place in the cosmos by altering how information is prioritized, processed, and then conceived. We have moved from speaking the energetic language of nature to becoming much more fluent in the mechanical language of the machine people. This is critical because language in all its forms shapes perception at a core level. Overall, this shows you the roots of the kind of thinking that led to the spinning jenny. It's a way of orientating on reality that is selecting for highly rational, numerical, logistical, and mechanical information that focuses on outcomes. The same kind of information that machines primarily run on, consume, and create. This is why those kinds of thinking are what define most modern measurements of intelligence. However, much of nature does not work this way, and indeed the overwhelming majority of the natural world is non-linear, poking and prodding in spontaneous works of art like the many markings of the birds or the crashings of a wave. Thus, one could say that the scope of information we access today has actually shrunk, along with the bandwidth of the human experience itself. This shrinking of the ecological self corresponds to our focus on progress, divorced from earth, from spirit, and from context. Instead, the primary information flow is now, at least at a collective level, mechanical. Since before the time of the Industrial Revolution, the human organism's system and sensorium were much more open and broad than they are now. They needed to be. We evolved in a context in which we were inherently attuned to animals, rivers, oceans, marshes, storm clouds, seasonal cycles, and the stars in the sky, because we depended on them to exist. This is why there are so many ancient systems of correspondence between individual human bodies, seasonal cycles, the four elements, and the stars. They were accessing the information being transmitted by these forces and communicating with them in an embodied way. Yes, we do have access to vast storehouses of structured how-to information, courses, books, and YouTube videos. We can drink our morning coffee in New York City, all the while surfing the web on our handy-dandy phone, which lets us then get real-time news about the Asian stock market, updates on the latest earthquake in South America, and what our cousin thinks is a cute picture of herself and worth posting on Instagram. Yet, does this person sitting alone at their kitchen table surfing the World Wide Web have access to more information in that moment than someone standing underneath an actual waterfall? If you have never done it, then I forgive you if you think the answer is yes. Standing under a waterfall is utterly overwhelming. It comes with incredible weight, countless changing oscillations of pressure, the taste and smell of the river, the all-consuming sound of crashing water, the need to maintain one's balance, and much, much more. It doesn't matter how hard I tried, I could never in a million years absorb even a fraction of all the information a waterfall can lay upon me in a single moment. It's enough not to be thrown asunder, yet alone to comprehend it fully. I want to invite you to consider that humans have always had access to vast amounts of information, megatons of it. Why? Because information is not just symbolic and intellectual. Consider that the impact of waves can teach a surfer. For every buffet is information flow teaching the organism how to know the currents of the ocean. When a serious practitioner of judo picks you up and slams you on the ground, or an expert in Muay Thai kicks you, they are giving you information. You can learn a lot more about combat getting your ribs bruised than by reading about what it feels like to be kicked. This is an information universe. The sun's gargantuan solar flares, the moon's metered and measured monthly cycle, the flow of the ocean's tides, the lightning bolt in the sky, the rumble of the earthquake, the hummingbird's heartbeat. It's all information. This kind of information and data is not conceptual, it's not rational, it's not linear, it's energetic. And the primary language of the universe is energetic. The point of all this is this. The energetic language of nature is the kind of language humans are literally designed to speak. And when we speak of what it means to be human, we speak of design. We speak of traits and qualities that are inherent and innate. This design is exceedingly true at the level of our somatic experience. Consider that the feelings that move through the body are not words, but elemental sensations: heavy, light, hot, cold, tingly, rocky, sticky, wet, hard, soft, explosive. This truth is also inherent in many ancient languages themselves, which are energy languages. Sanskrit, Chinese, Hawaiian, Yoruba. All these languages are primarily energetic in nature, where the word is meant to resonate as closely as possible with the feeling of the actual thing itself, instead of only acting as a symbolic tag for it within the brain. Some English words still possess this quality, like the word drip, 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 which sounds and feels like dripping water. Words like bam, boom, crack, all show us this quality of language being energetic. Language like this is language that comes from bodies interacting with a vivid environment. They are felt. No longer are we in open communication with all these energetic forces of nature because we mostly do not depend on them to survive. Even the various scientists who study nature in some iteration usually do so through instruments or machines meant to measure the information in mechanical ways. Gone is the direct attunement to nature to learn about her or to guess at what she will do. Instead, we learn about machines that are meant to learn about her. Most of us work with, or at the very least depend upon, cars, heavy machinery, computers, cash registers, thermostats, or cell phones for our bread and butter, me included. Machine language, by its very nature, orientates us away from the body, for machines do not have bodies. If we are to communicate with them, there has to be some mercury that lets us cross the threshold, and this, my friends, is primarily disembodied abstraction, the virtual reality worlds. A key feature of our age that is only going to grow in potency and scope. Humans are still very much the hunter-gatherers we originally evolved to be, but there is a new guest in our house, so to speak. A guest from a foreign land, intent on taking over the discussion. The first technologies. Every day, modern technology expands in power, and humans mistakenly believe that adopting these tools makes them more powerful by default. One could argue that the opposite is true, that the stronger machines become and the more dependent on them we are, the weaker we become. It all depends on perspective. Technology is only ever an aid that lets us leverage effort. It's a tool, and we are the wielders. When tools evolve beyond that, they become something else. Now, in 2025, this truth is becoming dangerously blurred, for we no longer see modern machine technology as a tool, but as something to become. But before we address that point, let's start at the beginning. The first technologies stank of stone, ash, and tree sap. They were primal and grisly. Fire, rocks, and clubs. Emerging as hominids in a world of blood, bone, and the deep bass rhythms of wilderness shaped how we understood tools. And make no mistake, humans are tool users. Within the animal kingdom, this trait is actually quite rare and is shared by corvids, otters, primates, and ants primarily. Out of all human capacities, this is perhaps one of the few that we truly excel in. It's likely impossible to think as a human being outside the context of tooling. From the first tools, which were all hunting and cooking implements, we moved to making clothing, blankets, baskets, earthen huts, pelted tents, more refined weapons, and then ritual objects that called and concentrated power. But more critically, the tools we work with alter how we engage with the environment. As we shape the world with our tools, they shape our understanding of our place in it. Because to tool is a part of human sense-making. This initial use of fire, stones, and clubs has morphed and mutated into the use of modern machines, an ability that would not be possible unless our ancestors had not lit countless fires, swung an untold number of clubs, and threw an impossible amount of stones, enough of them to make us tool users. We once relied on these primal tools for survival, but because of their utter simplicity, they required highly developed human skill for their use. For example, creating fire by rubbing sticks together is a sophisticated skill, at least at the level of the individual human embodying the ability. It's an ability that takes a long time to master. And if you find yourself in wet climates, the amount of practice it takes to make it reliable is astounding. Today, we use complex tools, but the skill required by the average user to deploy the tool is quite low. It does not take a whole lot of ability to use most modern machines. Most of us do not even know how most modern machines work. We just press the buttons. While not a universal truth, there is a tendency we observe. The simpler the tool, the more skilled the user must be to perform complex tasks with it. Consider the difference between a sword and an assault rifle. I would like to quote Ivan Illich on this. When a tool's per capita presence crosses a threshold, it exercises a radical monopoly over the satisfaction of a need, thus displacing other, more human ways of meeting that need. Radical monopoly exists where a major tool rules out natural competence. Much of modern machinery is made to be as user-friendly and low-skill as possible by a few select people who possess specialist skill sets in making them. What does this say about how we understand our human place in the world? You probably do not know how most of the technology you use daily actually works, and if you do, you are in the minority. Once, practically all humans could make fire from scratch, make tools of exquisite craftsmanship by hand, and perform complex weaving from materials that did not give up their gifts easily. While today you can buy a Native American headdress online, the act of actually making one was an ordeal that could take months, if not years, and required the human being to be skilled and highly attuned to environmental information flows. Feathers, leather, rope, gathered dyes, songs, prayers, offerings, ancestral veneration, devotion. That's what was involved back then. Back then, you, the embodied person, had to work for it. In this era, the human body as technology reigned supreme. The Industrial Revolution has brought with it an incredible ease for a select few, the few who weave the modern narrative, by the way, and ushered in a time of cohabitation with and dependence upon machines who do not require the average user to work for their gifts. Remember, everything has a price and there are no free rides. So, while we may be expending less energy at the control panel, something else is being sacrificed. Today, the toll we must pay is that of our innate humanity. Let's quote Ivan Illich one more time, my friends. Tools are intrinsic to social relationships. An individual relates himself in action to his society through the use of tools that he actively masters or by which he is passively acted upon. To the degree that he masters his tools, he can invest the world with his meaning. To the degree that he is mastered by his tools, the shape of the tool determines his own self-image. Let that sink in. The Trans-Humanist current and Antlered beings. Human beings are shapeshifters, a quality and capacity that emerges out of our nervous system's ability to enter into deep resonance with other creatures. This ability is neurological due to what modern neuroscience calls mirror neurons. A mirror neuron being a neuron that fires both when an animal acts and when the animal observes the same action performed by another. Mirror neurons are a big part of why we are capable of learning directly by watching others, both human and non-human alike. The ability is also psychospiritual, for we are capable of calling up from the depths of our other-than-conscious mind the feeling and perceptual states of other life forms, and essentially become them. We can and have done this with gods, animals, stones, and other elemental forces for eons. You have to look no further than Chinese martial arts that fight in the style of an animal, or in modern interpretive dance that expresses itself in the shape and spirit of the elements. Beyond this, esoteric energetic traditions and many different forms of alchemy have purposefully incorporated these patterns of other into them for millennia. I myself have worked with energetic traditions that allow us to palpably embody a sense of becoming trees, animals, the 5 elements of earth, air, fire, water, and ether. Others yet still have facilitated deep transformations into mythological creatures in ways that felt deeply visceral. I have taught others to do the same. The ability is present and just under the surface for us all to one degree or another. Cultures everywhere and in every time do this. When you observe primitive hunter-gatherer mythology, for example, you notice a distinct pattern. A vast array of humans displaying antlers and/or the outgrowths of various animal parts. On top of this, tribal and traditional adornments were often deeply animalistic or vividly elemental. These costumes and forms of clothing offered the wearer power, trans-species resonance, and was a form of spiritual technology in its own right. To wear the parts of an animal connected you to their power, giving you access to abilities you would otherwise not possess. Antlers, for example, hold many virtues like protection, maturity, fertility, vitality, and the ability to act like organic antennae to receive and transmit information. The centerpiece of my logo for Eating Ancient Virtue displays an ancestral figure with antlers for this reason. From outright shamanic transmutations aided by psychedelics deep in the jungle, to the wolf pelt worn by the hunter, to the ceremonial dresses worn by indigenous dancers, humans are malleable and change shape. In becoming something other, we become something more. And these transformations were not just psychological. Viking berserkers were known to don upon themselves the pelts of wolf and bear, only to perform complex ritualistic dances with them and then expose themselves to extreme heat all at once. As a result, they would erupt into battle as unstoppable forces. You know something works when you're willing to stake your life on it. This is a type of technology that emerged out of a world in which we were steeped in ecological information flows and where the human ability to actively seek resonance with other at an embodied level was dominant. Currently, however, machine information flow is more central to our experience. This brings us to transhumanism. Google's AI had this to say about it. Transhumanism is a philosophical and cultural movement that advocates for the use of technology to radically enhance human capabilities, such as physical and mental abilities, and to extend human life, potentially beyond biological limitations to a post-human state. Basically, transhumanism is the belief in human fragility, which sees our fleshy limitations as something to overcome and be improved upon with the help of machines, which assumes that machines are better than skin and bones. This is driven by a sense of not being enough, and there is a future podcast cooking along called A Tribute to Human Enoughness that I'll release at some point, which will explore this in more depth. But for now, remember this. Full-blown transhumanism is where the AI agenda eventually seeks to end. Make no mistake about it. Elon Musk himself has said, and I quote, "Humans must become cyborgs if they are to stay relevant in a future dominated by artificial intelligence." While I fully apprehend the value that machine parts could play in certain medical situations, and would not begrudge anyone for wearing a prosthetic limb, there is a difference between a last-ditch effort to make the best out of a bad situation and seeing something like this as an inherent improvement. To me, it isn't. And I am deeply wary of this agenda, for it's a call to sacrifice our humanity at the altar of a technocratic god and permanently lose access to the ancestral language of our soft animal body in favor of the hard language of the machine people. No thanks. And as strong as I feel about it, I know many people in our population do as well. This will eventually lead to a stark bifurcation in society, leading to groups steeped in machines and those who oppose such a stance. Historically, such strong striations lead to violence, but only time will tell how this all plays out. The machine gods have hijacked our shape-shifting abilities so that we envision a future of humans merged with machines. Metal implants, neural chips, prosthetic limbs, sex robots, virtual realities, and online gaming. If we let them, they will outstrip human ability. Gone are the days of the antlers, only to be replaced by plastic headsets, and soon, perhaps even a brain directly connected to the internet. At that point, we might as well call it what it is, the Matrix. In fact, getting plugged into the machine has already begun, and it all starts with the machine metaphor. Welcome to the machine metaphor. This agenda of transhumanist transformations, shapeshifting us into a race of people merged with machines, is already underway. The cyborg begins with the machine metaphor, for it opens the mind to a vision. All great movements begin with a vision. The machine metaphor is the mapping of machine and computer language onto humans. Said another way, this is where we compare human abilities to machine abilities and consider them to be the same. This is a major perceptual problem, for we are not computers or machines at all. It's in vogue to call humans biological machines or biocomputers. In truth, we are neither, and any attempt to draw those parallels is a hatchet job, cutting us apart at the seams and mistaking the modern machine mythos for the nature of reality. This happens at multiple levels of society, but for whatever reason, it has taken a strong hold in circles focused on spiritual or personal development. I am sure you have heard it. Consider how often you or people around you use these words to describe actions that they are taking. Download, upload, upgrade, optimize, reprogram, install, bring online, defrag, hack, rewire. I'm not talking about their use in computers, but things humans say they themselves are doing at the level of body and consciousness. These are all drawing parallels between machines and us. And at first glance, they seem to make sense, but if you give me a few minutes, I will show you how they actually fall deeply short of describing the true mystery of being human. Let's dismantle this whole notion with one of the more popular of these words, to download. When someone says that they downloaded something in spiritual culture, they refer to some kind of a transmission of information they received from somewhere. Depending on the person, it could be the universe, their spiritual guides, ascended masters, or something along those lines. When they say this, they are knowingly or unknowingly drawing a parallel to the actions of a computer working with files. This simple statement holds within it a vast set of assumptions about the nature of reality that reflects the underlying transhumanist undertow. Here is the thing, my friends. We have no idea what is actually happening at a functional level when someone receives a transmission from a spiritual force. Downloading something implies a functional set of mechanics that we already fully understand, because it refers to a definable action, an action we can easily map every single piece of. Right now, you can ask YouTube or Google to explain how downloading works, and the answer is there. It's no mystery. A child in a Chinese sweatshop or a chronic masturbator with Cheeto dust on their fingers can build a computer from scratch, provided they have the parts. Even more so, information in our human system acts nothing like a file or a program. Files and programs are discrete, separate bits of data meant to have a very definable set of functions that only exert influence when run with certain instructions. Yet humans are nothing like this. We can hear a single statement that alters the direction of our life or prompts us to rewrite entire parts of our history. I am sure you can think of a single conversation that totally changed you, and none of that was predictable. We literally can't take in a single piece of information without drawing a multitude of associations to it. Files, on the other hand, are predictable, segregated pieces of information with defined parameters. Inside humans, information is more like a holographic root system. Anything can potentially change or touch anything else at seemingly random. But now we get to the core of this podcast. Are you ready for this? If you were to gather together all of the world's greatest experts, they cannot currently create a single living cell from scratch. They simply cannot and have not been able to, despite many attempts at doing so. When I typed that sentence into ChatGPT, it said, "So yes, Even if you gather together the world's greatest biologists, chemists, and AI systems, they cannot generate life from lifelessness. They can mimic, modify, or recreate life, but they cannot originate it. And a human body is a constellation of over 30 trillion cells, working in a great symphony of awe-inspiring coherence that must also incorporate into it a person's psychospiritual, psychoenergetic, psycho-emotional, and psychological aspects. Our bodies both retain and accommodate ancient ancestral information flows while continuously responding to the flux of the environment in the now. How this system interacts with the non-biological spiritual forces is beyond our comprehension, and to compare it to downloading is laughable. Whatever human beings actually are is vastly beyond the scope of anything that currently exists within modern technology. We can fully mimic, modify, recreate, and originate modern technology with relative ease, at scale. But life is currently beyond us. And it is sheer hubris to compare humans and computers. The same could be said about any of these machines metaphor that refer to a process we can currently fully map and fully understand, because we do not understand human physiology or the human system almost at all. I once got into a debate with a popular educator who called our skin a solar panel. My God, where do I begin? Any and all of the functions machines have similar to our own just points towards the fact that humans have built a technology that attempts to emulate the functions crafted into us by deep time and evolution, not the other way around. Said another way, some aspects of computers and modern tech are crude, unsophisticated imitations of biological life. Your skin is not a solar panel. Solar panels as a piece of tech have existed for about 180 years, and they have simple non-adaptive functions. Skin, on the other hand, is an incredibly sophisticated, adaptive, ancient, intelligent sense organ that has vast arrays of functions, such as protecting the body from physical harm and pathogens, regulating body temperature, sensing touch, pressure, and temperature changes, and producing vitamin D through exposure to sunlight. It also acts as a barrier against moisture loss and harmful substances like toxins and UV radiation. The skin may also have photoreceptors like a solar panel, but the skin is so much more than that. Instead of using computer language to describe our processes, it is more accurate to work with organic or energetic language, such as to absorb or receive, to transmit or express, to metamorphose or advance, to balance or harmonize, to repattern or recondition, to increase capacity or ability, to sing into being or to weave, to dissolve or digest, to track or echolocate, to alchemize or to reshape. These are all open-ended and do not describe a known set of computer mechanics that we wrongly compare ourselves to. Today, we compare elite athletes to well-oiled machines, but perhaps if we still observed nature regularly, we might compare someone's strength to a lion's, or a dancer's grace to a gazelle. A sports car has incredible power and speed, but its capacities are inherently narrow in scope with little adaptability, while a human's adaptability is broad. Humans can make love with reckless abandon, dance, fight, swim, dive, jump, throw, climb, run, lift, roll, and twist, amongst many other things. No known machine even comes close to that. Researchers at Boston Robotics, an organization leading the charge in machine-based movement, breaks open a bottle of champagne to celebrate in triumph when they get a robot to jump onto a 3-foot box. This we herald as advanced technology. But just watch a dance set performed by the legendary dance troupe the Jabberwockies, and you will see advanced technology at work, my friends. Perhaps this all says more about our current technology than machines themselves, but any future machines that could replicate a human body's capabilities will have to work on models so utterly different than our current ones as to simply be something else entirely. Which brings me to a critical point. Beehives are more advanced than quantum computers. Before I tell you why though, let me share a quote with you. There is nothing new to be discovered in physics now. All that remains is more and more precise measurement. That's from physicist William Thomson, Lord Kelvin, in 1897. That was right before Planck, Einstein, Poincare, Heisenberg, Bohr, and Schrödinger discovered relativity and quantum mechanics. Oof, I bet Lord Kelvin turns in his grave every time someone reads his quote, in which case I apologize for disturbing his slumber, but sometimes sacrifices have to be made. The point is that science is always changing. It's never right, only less wrong. People treat quantum mechanics like the truth, but what will physics be in 30,000 years? Unrecognizable. This is why I cringe when people compare us to quantum computers. We are not quantum computers. We are something much more dazzling and beautifully mysterious than anything modern technology has to offer. If the combined intelligence of all the scientists on Earth cannot create a single biological cell from scratch, what does it mean that quantum computers already exist? Oddly enough, it means that beehives are more advanced than quantum computers. A beehive is a self-sustaining, multi-headed, communal organism that reproduces, moves, calculates, communicates, reorganizes, reassembles, defends, or retreats, all done at high speeds. The action of a single beehive can populate multiple acres in one day. A single hive is so utterly vast in scope that building one that is identical to theirs is far beyond the reach of any human organization. And each human being is even much more complex than this. Why then would we compare the 4 billion year old human organism to a quantum computer? The machine mythos. Every time we claim we download something, we are reducing ourselves so much more than we realize. All this brings together a critical point. Nature supports modern computation, but is not defined by it. Modern technology is but one possible iteration of technology. Technology is simply a set of tools that allows us as the tool-using animal to leverage our energy. Ancient Egypt's technology ran on stone, and their culture expressed that. The Sanskrit culture focused on sound, and they developed incredible sonic methods encoded in mantra yoga. Many indigenous cultures concentrated on plants and animals, and thus they developed hunting and gathering methods, but also developed ways to work with plant medicines and the way of the animal powers. If advanced alien species do exist, and I'm pretty sure they do, they are likely far beyond modern computation, the paradigms that support it, and likely have access to materials we cannot even imagine. Although binary code, like in computers, does appear to be a facet of nature, modern computation is only one expression of that, while Taoist yin and yang theory is another. The universe is weirder and more complex than modern machines. However, all of life on this planet is more alike than different. Thus, it is true to say that you and I have more in common with a bear than we do a laptop. You and I are more like an ocean than a Rolls Royce. You and I are more like an oak tree than a rocket ship. Now, I don't want to sound like I hate machines because I don't. In fact, there are many machines I appreciate and have an ongoing relationship with, such as my computer, my car, and my house fans. And really, I love my house fans. I also must admit to have a special appreciation for my father's Porsche. And my friends, that's an incredible car. No, I don't hate machines. This isn't about hate. It's about remembering what it means to be human and having a different vision for the future, where instead of incorporating artificial intelligence into our systems, we focus on activating our innate AI or our ancestral intelligence. Let us recall that we have soft animal bodies made of ancient ocean water that ooze sexual fluids, course with blood, and feel deeply. We are organisms, not mechanisms. Let's learn to regrow antlers once again. Living with the machine people while remembering what it means to be human. For the foreseeable future, we will all be cohabiting this wondrous planet with the machine people. This is okay. However, for those of us who feel called to maintain our humanity in the process, and even go deeper into it, it will take a concerted effort. It is a multi-layered process that will require ongoing practices and shifts in perspective. Maintaining the thread of our humanity involves understanding the key differences between humans and machines, anchoring into our ancestral heritage as a species, maintaining our living somatic experience, and opening ourselves to once again speak the energetic language of nature, the language we were designed to speak by deep time. My invitation to you is to begin learning from nature once again, for this one act addresses all the various points above. One could argue that everything we encounter, from plastic to forest fire, is nature. And from one vantage point, they are correct. And from another, let us be honest, there is a solid qualitative difference between an apartment in downtown Miami and finding oneself knee-deep in the mud of the Amazon basin. One can learn from walls and electrical sockets, I'm sure, but I refer here to the practice of opening one's perception to the world of birds, bodies of water, and buzzing bees. If we can immerse ourselves into relationality with non-machine people, it can begin to reawaken our own AI, that ancestral intelligence that defines being human. But doing so requires us to once again hear the whispers of nature, the bubbling of a brook, the unassuming rings of a tree, the quivering of grass as it is touched by the winds, the diverse but subtle color palette of lava stone, the chirping of the birds outside our window, the body language of the next door neighbor's cat. All these speak, can potentially teach, and can also help reawaken us to the non-virtual reality, the real stuff. So I encourage you to feel the wind and the direction that it is blowing from. Sense its caress and ask, is it sharp, soft, severe? Notice, listen. Identify the 4 cardinal directions, especially in your habitual habitats and haunts. A compass can help you get started if you don't know where they are. Take time to observe the sky, as cloud gazing and stargazing are fruitful activities. Watch animals closely and learn from them. Cats, birds, lizards, insects, and dogs. Play this game. When you hear a bird, try and find where it is at. And just how we once mapped the working of the cosmos as the actions of beings, like the fates weaving reality into being with hands, it's possible to remember our place in the world by putting away the cell phone and going for a walk barefoot. This teaches you to listen to the earth with every step. And may you follow your feet, my friends. You have been listening to the Elder Fire podcast, and if you appreciated it and feel like sharing some love with me, come over to my Substack, eatingancientvirtue.substack.com, and let me know. Thanks again for being here. Till next time.